I just discovered my wife was cheating with our neighbor, and now she's claiming our $500,000 house and $200. $0 in savings are mine if I drop the divorce. Except I found out she secretly transferred everything to her sister last week. I never thought I'd be the guy to catch his wife cheating on him, let alone find out she's been banging the neighbor behind my back for months. It hit me like a punch to the gut. I was blindsided, and honestly, I still can't believe how deep the rabbit hole goes. It all started with little things, you know. Small signs that I brushed off at first but started to add up. Her phone buzzing at odd hours, her suddenly being busy when I try to talk, her brushing off my questions with that bitchy, dismissive attitude. I figured she was just stressed or maybe had some secret hobby she didn't want to tell me about. I was naive enough back then to think everything was fine, but deep down, I knew something was wrong. Then one night, I came home earlier than usual from work. I caught her in the act. My neighbor, Jake, was leaving our bedroom through the back door. She saw me walk in and froze like a deer in headlights. Her face turned white, and she started babbling some bullshit about how Jake was just helping her with something. Yeah, right. That wasn't the first time I'd seen her act weird around him, but that was the moment I knew for sure. I could see the way she looked at him, like she was desperate for his attention, like she was craving that secret thrill. And I caught her red-handed. That's when everything changed. I confronted her right then and there. I told her I knew she'd been cheating, that I saw Jake leaving our house. She started lying faster than I could process, said I was paranoid, that I was imagining things, that Jake was just a friend, and that I was overreacting. She called me insecure, accused me of not trusting her. But I wasn't stupid. I saw the lipstick on her collar, the way she was sweating and stumbling over her words. She kept insisting she loved me, that it was just a mistake, that Jake meant nothing, but I could see her lying through her teeth. That day I felt like my world was crashing down around me. The worst part, she started playing the victim, crying, saying I was ruining everything because I was insecure and jealous. That's when I really started to feel the anger boiling up inside. How could she do this? How could she betray me like this after everything we built? Our house, our savings, everything I worked for over the years. She was claiming she'd stay loyal if I just dropped the divorce. She even threw in that she'd give me half of our house, which is worth about $500,000, and she'd let me keep our savings of $200, $0. It sounded like a twisted peace offering, but I knew better. I knew she was just trying to buy me off, to make it easier for her to walk away without any consequences. The thing is, I found out she secretly transferred everything, the house, the savings, even the joint accounts, to her sister last week. I caught the bank transfer receipts. Turns out she's been planning this for months. Her sister, Lisa, is some shady character I never really paid attention to. But now I see she's been funneling money to her, hiding everything. That's when I knew this wasn't just a fling, this was a full-blown betrayal, and she was willing to burn everything we had to keep her affair secret. I felt numb, honestly. I was furious but also devastated. All those years, all the plans we made gone. And now she's sitting there, lying, crying, trying to manipulate me into dropping the divorce, promising to fix everything if I just give her a second chance. But I wasn't buying it anymore. I saw through her lies. I saw her greed, her arrogance, her selfishness. And I knew I had to do something about it. That's where I am now, stuck between anger, heartbreak, and a determination to get what's rightfully mine. Once I uncovered that she'd transferred everything, the house, the savings, even the joint accounts, to her sister Lisa, I realized this wasn't just a moment of betrayal. It was a carefully planned move to wipe me out, to leave me with nothing while she and Jake rode off into some fantasy life. I couldn't believe how cold and calculated she'd become. For years, I thought she was just a bit bitchy, a little high maintenance, but now I saw her for what she really was, a manipulative, selfish woman capable of anything to keep her affair hidden and her bank account intact. At first, I just sat there staring at the bank statements and transfer receipts, feeling like I'd been punched in the stomach. How could she do this? All those years, all the sacrifices I made, working late, cutting back on my own needs, trusting her, and she was secretly draining us dry. It was like a punch to the gut every time I looked at the numbers. I started to get angry. Not just angry at her, but furious at myself for not seeing it sooner, for not noticing the signs. I kept thinking about the house, the savings, the life we built, all of it gone or about to be gone. I needed a plan. Fast. I knew I couldn't just confront her again and expect her to come clean. She was expert at lying, at twisting the story to make herself look innocent. So I decided to dig deeper. I hired a private investigator. I wanted proof. I needed to know exactly what she'd done, who she'd told, how far her lies went. The investigator confirmed what I suspected. She'd been in contact with her sister Lisa almost daily, transferring money, planning how to cut me out completely. This wasn't some fleeting affair. It was a full-on scheme to leave me high and dry. Meanwhile, I started collecting evidence. Screen captures of bank transfers, her text messages with Lisa, photos of her sneaking around with Jake. I even found a hidden folder on her phone where she kept receipts, plans, and secret messages. I knew I had to be careful. If she caught wind I was onto her, she'd probably destroy everything. I couldn't let that happen. I also started to think about how to handle the legal side of things. I contacted a lawyer who specialized in divorce and asset recovery. I needed to know my rights, especially since she'd already moved everything out of reach. The emotional toll was brutal. I felt betrayed, crushed, and mad enough to see red. Every time I thought about her lying to me, cheating behind my back, I felt like I was drowning in a sea of betrayal. I'd given her so much, my time, my love, my trust, and she'd repaid me with deception and greed. But I also knew I had to stay sharp. I couldn't let her manipulate me further. I had to be strategic. I started writing down everything: dates, conversations, evidence, everything that could help me fight for what's mine. In the meantime, she kept up the act, crying and saying she was sorry, claiming she still loved me and wanted to work things out. I didn't buy it. Not for a second. I knew her game. She was just trying to keep me quiet while she and her sister planned their escape. The more she begged, the more I saw through her. I realized that her tears, her apologies, her promises to change, they were all just part of her manipulation. She thought she could buy her way out of this mess, just drop some money, and I'd be too weak or too stupid to fight back. I also started to think about the future. If she's already transferred everything, what happens if I don't act fast? I couldn't let her drain the house, the savings, and then walk away scot-free. I decided I'd fight her in court, challenge the transfers, and demand the assets be frozen until the case was resolved. I knew she'd try to hide more, maybe even try to sell the house or withdraw more money, but I was determined not to let her get away with it. I had to be the one to stand up and take control now, or I'd lose everything I'd worked for. This whole experience has been a nightmare, honestly. I used to think marriage was about trust and partnership, but now I see how dangerous greed and betrayal can be. I feel like I've been played, used, and discarded, but I'm not going down without a fight. I've got my evidence, my lawyer, and a clear plan to recover what's rightfully mine. The hardest part is accepting that the woman I loved and trusted turned out to be this cold, calculating person, but I refuse to let her win. I'll do everything I can to get justice, even if it means tearing this whole thing apart. After gathering all the evidence and talking to my lawyer, I realized I needed to act fast. The fact that she'd already transferred everything to her sister was a huge blow, but it also gave me a concrete starting point. I found out from my lawyer that I could file for an emergency injunction to freeze the assets before she managed to do any more damage. If I didn't move quickly, she might try to sell the house, withdraw more money, or hide assets even further. I wasn't about to let her get away with it. So I went to see my lawyer the next day. We prepared the paperwork for the injunction, and I handed over all the evidence I'd collected: bank transfer receipts, text message screenshots, her secret folder on her phone. I told my lawyer everything I knew about her plans to cut me out and how she'd been lying about her intentions. I was furious. I'd worked hard for that house, those savings. It wasn't just money, it was my life savings, my future, everything I'd built. And now it felt like she was trying to erase me from it all. The court date was scheduled for a few days later. In the meantime, I had to keep a close eye on everything. I changed all my passwords, set up alerts on our bank accounts, and even hired a private investigator to keep tabs on her and her sister. I didn't trust her not to try some sneaky move before the court date. I knew she was desperate, and desperation can make people do crazy things. My gut told me she'd try to hide more money, maybe even try to sell the house without me knowing. I had to be ready. When I confronted her about the court order, she flipped out. She started screaming, calling me paranoid and jealous, saying I was ruining everything because I couldn't trust her. She told me I was overreacting, that she loved me and only wanted to fix things. But I saw right through her. She was panicked, her bitchy attitude replaced with outright desperation. She kept insisting she'd give me the house, the savings, everything if I just dropped the case. I told her I wasn't interested in her bribes. I wanted what was fair and what she'd stolen from me. That day she threw a fit, claiming she'd never do anything to hurt me, that she'd always loved me, and that I was just too blind to see how much she cared. Yeah, right, I'd heard enough lies. I knew she was just trying to manipulate me into dropping everything. I felt a mixture of disgust and sadness. I'd loved her, trusted her, and now I saw the ugly truth. She was a selfish, greedy woman who'd been cheating and scheming behind my back for months. The court hearing was intense. My lawyer presented all the evidence, and I testified about how she'd been secretly transferring assets to her sister, lying about her whereabouts, and cheating on me with Jake. The judge was furious when she heard about the transfers, especially since she found out the house and savings were moved out of our joint accounts without my knowledge. The judge issued an immediate injunction, freezing all those assets until the case could be properly reviewed. I felt a small sense of relief, but I knew this was just the beginning. She'd try to fight back, I was sure of it. Meanwhile, she doubled down on her lies. She kept claiming she was innocent, that it was all a misunderstanding, that I was just jealous and paranoid. She even accused me of being abusive, which honestly was laughable. I never laid a finger on her, never raised my voice. But she was good at spinning stories, making herself the victim. I could see her trying to rally her friends and family to back her up, to paint me as the bad guy. That's when I realized this was going to be a long, ugly fight. She was desperate to keep what she'd stolen, and I had to be just as relentless to get it back. I felt exhausted, drained. Every day was a new battle, a new lie to uncover, a new threat to counter. But I also felt more determined than ever. I knew I couldn't let her get away with this. I had worked too hard, sacrificed too much, to see it all flushed down the drain because of her greed and betrayal. As much as it hurt to confront the reality of her deception, I knew I had to keep fighting. I was ready to see this through, no matter how ugly it got. Because at the end of the day, I deserved justice, and I wasn't going to let her steal that from me. The weeks that followed were a whirlwind of legal battles and emotional turmoil. After the court froze the assets, I thought I finally had some breathing room, but it was short-lived. My wife, Amanda, didn't take the injunction lightly. She started throwing accusations left and right, trying to turn everyone against me. She claimed I was controlling, jealous, even abusive, anything to distract from her own lies. She went so far as to call the police, claiming I was harassing her, but I had all the evidence to prove I was just fighting to get back what she'd stolen. The police dismissed her false claims quickly. They saw through her manipulations. Meanwhile, Amanda's attitude shifted from bitchy and manipulative to outright hostile. She'd show up at my house unannounced, banging on the door, screaming about how I was ruining her life. She'd cry, beg, then switch to venomous insults. I kept my distance, knowing that any confrontation could be used against me later, but her behavior was escalating. I knew she was trying to pressure me into dropping the case or settling for a quick payout. She kept insisting I should be reasonable, that she'd give me a fraction of what she'd stolen if I just let it go, but I wasn't interested in her crumbs. I wanted everything she took, and I was prepared to fight for it. One day, she crossed a line. I caught her sneaking around the house with a bag full of documents and some cash. When I confronted her, she snapped. She told me she was just gathering her things, that she was leaving because she couldn't stand the pressure. But I knew better. She was trying to hide more money, more assets, trying to pull a fast one before the court could catch her. I took photos of her sneaking around, and I handed everything over to my lawyer. This woman was relentless, but so was I. I wasn't going to let her get away with any more deception. It was around this time that I decided to dig deeper into her sister Lisa's involvement. I hired a private investigator again, and he uncovered some disturbing details. Lisa had been laundering money for Amanda, transferring funds to offshore accounts, and even trying to set up a fake sale of the house to herself. The investigator caught her red-handed trying to forge documents to make it look like she owned the house legally. That was the final straw. This wasn't just some petty affair. Amanda had been orchestrating an elaborate scheme to steal everything I had with her sister's help. I was furious. I had to act fast. I filed a motion to revoke the transfers and to declare the entire property and savings as marital assets, arguing that Amanda's actions were fraudulent and illegal. The judge agreed, and more court hearings were scheduled. Amanda's lawyer tried to argue that she was just trying to protect her interests, but the evidence was clear. She had lied, transferred assets without my consent, and tried to cover her tracks. I could see the panic in her eyes when she realized she might lose everything she'd schemed for. The emotional toll was heavy. I felt betrayed, crushed, and angry all at once. I'd loved her once, believed in us, and now I saw her for what she truly was, a selfish, greedy woman capable of any lie or manipulation to get what she wanted. I kept thinking about how much I'd lost, our house, our savings, the future I'd envisioned. It seemed so unfair that one person could destroy so much with a few lies and a sneaky plan, but I also knew I had to stay strong. I refused to let her win. I had the evidence, the law on my side, and a clear goal to get back what's rightfully mine. As the legal battles raged on, Amanda's attitude grew more bitter. She started to make thinly veiled threats, hinting she'd fight dirty if I pushed her too far. I knew she was desperate, but I was prepared. I had my lawyer, my evidence, and a resolve that wouldn't break. I realized that this wasn't just about money anymore. It was about respect, dignity, and reclaiming what she tried to steal from me. I also started to think about my mental health. This ordeal was draining, but I refused to let it destroy me. I had to stay focused, stay calm, and keep fighting for what was mine. The next court date was approaching, and I knew that Amanda would do everything she could to manipulate the system or stall. But I was ready. I'd come too far to give up now. I had to see this through, to make sure she paid for her lies and theft. It was clear she thought she could outsmart everyone, but I'd learned her game. She'd underestimated me, and I was determined to come out on top. No matter what, I was going to get justice because I knew deep down I deserved it more than she ever did. The court date finally arrived after what felt like an eternity. By then, I'd spent weeks preparing, poring over every piece of evidence, coordinating with my lawyer, and trying to keep my head straight amid the chaos. Amanda, of course, came in with her usual bitchy attitude, trying to look innocent but failing miserably. She kept insisting she'd done nothing wrong, that she was just trying to protect her interests, and that I was overreacting. I could see the desperation in her eyes, the way she clung to her stories, knowing full well the mountain of evidence against her. When the judge called the case, my lawyer laid out everything: the transfers to her sister, her secret folder, the forged documents, her attempts to sell the house behind my back. I testified about how I discovered the affair, the betrayal, and her ongoing deception. The courtroom was tense, and I could see Amanda's face pale as the judge listened carefully. It was clear she was realizing her schemes were unraveling. The judge was furious when he read the evidence of her illegal transfers and fraudulent activities. He issued a court order declaring the assets as marital property, revoking all the transfers to Lisa, and ordering her to return the house and the savings to the estate. Amanda sat there, seething and furious, trying to argue her way out of it, but her words fell flat against the solid evidence. She kept insisting that I was just trying to ruin her, that she'd always loved me, that she was innocent. But the judge wasn't buying it. He pointed out her blatant attempts to hide assets, her lies, and her betrayal. The court ordered her to pay restitution, cover the legal fees, and prepare for an upcoming divorce trial. It was a huge blow for her, and I could see her frustration boiling over. She tried one last time to plead her case, but it was too late. I felt a mixture of relief and exhaustion. Justice was finally starting to come into focus. The house, the savings, they were now officially mine again, and I had the legal backing to keep them. I knew Amanda wouldn't give up easily. She'd fight dirty, try to drag this out, or come up with new schemes. But I was prepared. I had my evidence, my lawyer, and a new sense of resolve. I realized that I'd been right all along. She'd been scheming behind my back, lying, cheating, and trying to steal everything I valued. And now it was time to rebuild. After the court session, Amanda stormed out of the courtroom, cursing and yelling threats. She told me she'd never accept losing everything, that she'd fight me every step of the way. But I didn't care. I knew I'd done everything I could to prove my case, and I'd secured my rights. I was angry, yes, but also relieved. The worst was over, and I could finally start to breathe again. It was a long journey, one full of betrayal, lies, and heartbreak, but I'd come out stronger. I realized I'd learned a lot through this mess. Trust is fragile, and greed can turn even the most loving partner into a ruthless schemer. But I also learned that standing up for myself, fighting for what's right, and not giving in to manipulation are the true keys to moving forward. Now, I'm in the process of divorce, sorting out the final details and trying to pick up the pieces of what's left of my life. I don't know what the future holds, but I do know I won't be naive again. I've become more cautious, more aware of the red flags. And I've learned that sometimes the people closest to us can turn out to be the biggest enemies. Still, I'm grateful I fought for myself, for what's rightfully mine. I hope this serves as a warning to anyone who thinks they can get away with betrayal and theft, because in the end, justice might be delayed, but it's never denied. In the end, I realized that trusting someone blindly can cost you everything. Amanda's betrayal shattered the life I thought we had, but it also forced me to wake up and see things clearly. I learned that greed and lies can hide behind a pretty face, and that sometimes the people we love the most are capable of the worst things. The process of fighting back was draining, emotionally and financially, but I knew I couldn't let her get away with stealing my future. Getting the assets back and seeing her face when the judge ordered her to return everything was a small victory, but it wasn't just about the money anymore. It was about reclaiming my dignity, my respect, and my life. That period was brutal, full of sleepless nights, anger, sadness, and a lot of questioning. But gradually I started to rebuild. I cut ties with her completely, focusing on myself and what I needed to move forward. I learned the importance of setting boundaries, of protecting what's yours, and of never ignoring the signs of betrayal, no matter how convincing someone might seem. Looking back, I think the biggest lesson I took from this is that no amount of money or material possessions can replace honesty and loyalty. Amanda thought she could buy her way out of this mess, but she underestimated the power of truth and justice. I'm not perfect, and I still have scars from everything she put me through, but I'm stronger now. I'm more cautious, more aware, and more determined to never let anyone manipulate me like that again. To anyone reading this who might be going through something similar, my advice is simple. Trust your instincts. Gather evidence if you suspect something's wrong, and don't be afraid to fight for what's yours. People can surprise you in the worst ways, but you have to stand your ground. The road to justice is rarely easy, but it's worth it. Because at the end of the day, no one should be allowed to cheat, lie, or steal their way into a better life at your expense. Protect yourself, stay vigilant, and remember, the truth eventually comes out. And when it does, you'll be glad you fought for it.